lead. Some of the areas that we cover in our engagement with social enterprises and impactful startups include areas such as marketing, impact measurement and reporting, stakeholder engagement, distribution, go-to-market strategy, just to mention a few areas. Looking forward to today's conversation, and thank you very much.
Maybe Evans.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Good morning to all of you. Allow me first of all start by really apologizing on my background is not so pleasant. There's some noise. I'm at the airport and I had to really be part of this conversation. My name is Ivan Sokinyi. I'm the CEO of the East Africa Philanthropy Network. What we do as a network is we want to see sustainable development within the East Africa region driven by a vibrant philanthropy. And as a network, what we do generally is to provide a platform that really champions, that connects, and that co-creates innovative solutions that advance philanthropy within the East Africa region. And our current focus areas as a network includes influencing the philanthropy ecosystem. And we are doing this by promoting knowledge, promoting learning, promoting acquisition of best practices within the sector, and of course, any other efforts that includes strengthening the legal policy environment for philanthropy. The other area that we focus on is around enhancing philanthropy practice, and we do this by deepening stakeholder engagement, and that's why the conversation we are having today is very important to us as a network. So we want to see how philanthropy can work with the private sector, how philanthropy can work with the government, and how philanthropy can work within itself. So that multi-sectoral approach to development is an area that we are really keen on as a network. And lastly, we appreciate that even if you have a stronger ecosystem, stronger practices that promote philanthropy, if you do not have strong institutions, then it's as good as nothing. So we also exist to strengthen the institutional capacity of the member and non-member organizations serving within the philanthropy sector. In brief, that is what we do. Our membership is spread throughout Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Ethiopia. And we are celebrating 20 years this year. Thank you so much and looking forward to the deliberations of the day.
Congratulations on that. Good celebration.
Maybe I can call Sam.
Actually, we're not going to continue jumping into introductions. Let me jump in and play a catalyst video, then we kick off with the session. One second.
Welcome to Catalyzing Change Week. This year's Catalyzing Change Week is about solutions from the front lines by social innovators.
In 2022, Catalyst 2030 concentrated its efforts on bringing proximate leaders and frontline solutions to the forefront. Collaborations led by members from the Global South produced groundbreaking reports on climate and transforming education, with an emphasis on offering local solutions. We continued our mission to create an enabling environment for social entrepreneurs to flourish by initiating a letter to donors, signed by more than 1,200 social entrepreneurs and innovators. The Catalyst 2030 awards ceremony was spectacular, and the awards themselves welcomed by the private sector, governments, multilaterals and donors.
Catalyst 2030 as a movement is disruptive.
One of the best things I think that's come out of Catalyst 2030 so far is incredible collaboration across the ecosystem that just didn't exist before Catalyst came into being.
The thing I love most about Catalyst is that it's an open movement for social entrepreneurs around the world.
I'd encourage anyone who's looking to be more connected with their local communities around social development goals to come along to Catalysing Change Week.
Welcome to Catalysing Change Week.
All right. Now we can kick off the session. Evans, back to you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, once again, my apologies. I tried looking for the best place, which was a bit quiet. This is the best I could get, so forgive my background. So allow me start by saying that, or rather by quoting a quote from one of my great mentors in this space, Myro, who works with the Children Investment Funds Foundation. And she says that if donors want to be more effective in Africa, they must be creating solutions with Africans to the challenges diagnosed by Africans using expertise and resources that are African. This is what real accountability and real sustainability actually mean. I love that quote because the conversations which we are seeing in this region, in this continent, and across is really focusing on, mobilizing resources into this continent, is really focusing on the localization agenda, is really focusing on shifting the power agenda. And for this to happen, then as the local entities here, we've got to really understand what it really means to have locally led development. So the conversation today is really pegged on the donor perspective, and I believe we will dive deeper into that. But allow me first of all start by painting a picture of what is really happening in the donor landscape. What are these areas that they are supporting? And as the East Africa Philanthropy Network, we've done a lot of research around these areas. A lot of knowledge materials have been produced. And our data points out to three major areas that these donor entities are currently focusing on. And allow me just quickly take you through that. One is the area of health. And in health, they are looking at the infrastructure, the primary health care, the maternal and baby health, HIV and AIDS, malnutrition, and of course, emergency health relief, for example, what was happening during the COVID-19. So that is on one aspect, the health issues. The second aspect is around education, scholarships, building of schools, construction of libraries, on-job education through internships, coaching and mentoring, among other areas. And of course, the third one, taking the third largest share of that funding is really around economic empowerment. And on this, they're looking at the multi-sectors, the agribusiness, manufacturing, financial services, entrepreneurship programs, training, employability, and digital skills training, access to finance for micro, medium, and small and medium enterprises, including startups. Now, with that understanding, it is important then for us to get into very important conversations. And before I get into that, I just want us to understand that data is pointing out that 60% of African population is currently under the age of 25 years of age. And that is around 748 million in terms of heads counted. And they are projecting that by the year, in the next 30 years, this population is expected to increase by 50% over the next 30 years. And this therefore means that we really have to center, one, our development on local resources, but also focus this on the youth. And so the donor community is very well conversant with this, because that is a fact, that is out of data that has been, that is demonstrating the actual condition on the ground. Lastly, 16% of philanthropic funding for Africa, we are made to understand that it goes to organizations headquartered in Africa, only 16%. And that should be a worry for us. And so when we are talking about donor and funding and direct funding and what the landscape really looks like, these are some of the things that we really have to understand. And going into the conversations of the day, there is a lot that is happening, for example, around direct funding, around how we can harness African giving, because it's time for us to really focus on locally mobilized resources driven by locally led organizations towards the local challenges that we are dealing with as a continent. And talking about the conversation around direct funding, time is now for us to deliver and accelerate impact. The time is now. The time for radical imagination is now. The time to move money is now. And that is the conversation that is happening within the donor entities, for example, within the network of the East Africa Philanthropy Network. And we are championing these conversations across the continent and across the globe through our peers in terms of the networks that are serving the philanthropy space. And some of the things that can really, that organizations that want to access, for example, direct funding. So the conversation on direct funding is now very timely. We are actually having a caucus within the network of EAP and of funders who really want to champion and push forth the agenda around having direct funding to organizations. In fact, we have a conference which is coming up in the month of June from the 28th to the 30th in Zanzibar, Tanzania. And one of the sessions that we are looking at is around how do we encourage more donors to provide direct funding to locally led institutions within this continent. And so how do we then position ourselves to attract that direct funding? I think one of the things that we must do is for us to have proximity to those funders that are giving direct funding. And there's a lot of, for example, basket funds that are currently being championed through collaborative approach with other donors. For example, the Africa Visionary Fund. We have other donors based in the West, the global North, who are supporting this space, or rather this continent, the likes of Ford Foundation, the likes of Mott Foundation, the likes of Hewlett, Conrad Hilton Foundation. And so how do we then position ourselves? We've got to really have what we call proximity to the funders, because you only get to access these things if you know where they are. So that proximity is really important for us to gain access to these fundings that then comes direct to us as entities championing sustainable development. The other thing for us to do is to really take care of the basics. Basics here, I mean, they have to be, you know, as an entity, you've got to have the formally recognized status, including the documentations and all that. You've got to be funding ready. And so being funding ready means having the necessary basic requirements for the fundings that we are talking about. There are many things that donors are currently interested in. There are many conversations going on, conversations around equity, conversations around, you saw the video about the catalytic initiative. And one of the major things coming out is the whole conversation around collaboration. So for you to position yourself to be able to attract the kind of fundings that we are discussing today, then you've got to also demonstrate that your approach that you are giving towards the development initiative that you want to pursue is collaborative in nature, is embracing partnerships, is really putting the local entities, the localization agenda at the center of the conversations that you're having communities, you know, at the center of these initiatives that you're talking about. Inclusivity is another area that these people are really looking at. You know, the safeguarding conversations are areas that you really have to take into consideration. So transparency. So these are some of the issues that in accessing and attracting and positioning your entities, the investment vehicles that you are using to pursue development must really put into consideration so that you are able to attract these the direct funding, or rather to position yourself for the direct funding that we are talking about. And of course, there's a way in which, and most of the time we are looking at this direct funding from, you know, from the global north. My philosophy and what we are championing as EAPN is that we have enough resources. We have more than enough locally here within the continent, locally here within the region. So we've got to see how we can promote African giving, how we can promote the unlocking of funds from high net worth individuals, from the corporate entities that are championing sustainable development, and then tap into these resources. So more African-led institutions, we want to see them championing the African investment agenda. We want to see increased ownership of the development agenda by African communities, by African governments, by African institutions. And so platforms like this one really promote such kinds of conversations and movement building, for example, around ownership, community ownership in development. So capacity of civil society organizations is another area that we really have to look into, holding governments accountable and sustaining momentum around philanthropic priorities, around social investment priorities are some of the conversations that we really need to have. We've got to really build strong relations with the government, strong relations with the private sector, active support and co-investment with philanthropy priority areas. So that tripartite collaboration that I earlier mentioned are really areas that we really have to look into. In identifying donors, I normally say that we have got say around 4 important and strategic issues and areas that organizations have to look into. And one of them is the people. So when you are positioning an entity to tap into these resources that we are talking about from the donor communities, from these corporates, from the investment actors that are existing within this continent and from the global north, then the people agenda has to really be at the center of the preparations that you've got to make. So staffing, boards in place, you know, all that to do with people. Then of course the planning is very key. The infrastructure, the hardware infrastructure, the software infrastructure, very important. There's to be, again, lastly, resources. What is it going to cost you to fundraise from these entities? That has to be taken into consideration. Then the focus for case for funding and case for support on issues which are important to your organization. One of the mistakes that I've seen many organizations make is conforming to the donor areas of focus. And I normally tell organizations that, hey, you are the vision bearer. It is you who has identified the need within communities, within the society. Stick to that, because that is what will enable you achieve the internal desire that you have in bringing out the development that you're talking about. So not conforming to the donor needs, but really sticking to the gaps that you've identified, what communities have identified in terms of that participatory approach to grant making, to coming up with solutions for these communities and all that. So you've got to carefully also consider available organizational resources and how they can be effectively used. Actively having action-oriented fundraising plan, which emphasizes on impact and results, and the programs that you really want to deliver is very important. Then on periodic basis, there has to be ongoing review and learning for future programs and the impact that all those have on your fundraising plans. Allow me say, Lynette, I normally talk too much. So when you feel that it's time for me to stop, please let me know so that I stop, so that I don't over. Sorry?
I'm saying we are good. It's just go on.
Yeah, thank you so much. So again, there are some principles that organizations have to really put into place. Some of these I've already mentioned, but one of them is the integration agenda. The challenges and the opportunities which this continent has are really interwoven. So cross-sectoral, integrated approaches to funding, to development, to dealing with the challenges that we have in the societies has to really be at the center of the strategies that we are working with. So we have to really embrace the collaborative mindset. We have to embrace that integrated approach mindset for us to really deal with these issues that we are talking about. Secondly, is this agenda that we are really pursuing, the localization agenda, local knowledge, local insights, local delivery of context, local investments, specific investments, and even the partnership context that we are talking about has to really embrace the localization agenda. Then of course there's the execution agenda, using evidence to map out the priorities in terms of geographies, in terms of demographics. We've got to really improve execution of the current portfolio and identifying those which are not performing early so that you can re-strategize. So the monitoring evaluation agenda is really important while having these conversations. Then of course, lastly, number 4 is the sustainability agenda. From the onset, all investments which we design must have sustainability in mind, because the donors that we are talking about, the general support that we are pursuing, at one moment, you know, who knows, they may pull out, the funding may be tied up. What does that mean? So we've got to look at ways in which we embrace sustainability as a principal aspect when fundraising, when designing programs, when looking into future of organizations, and when coming up with priority areas and priority strategies for development. Allow me finish by talking about some opportunities that I see from both sides of the divide, the left hand and the right hand, the donor community and these entities that are receiving grants from the donor communities. Funders really want to target groups, or rather, let me say that funders should target groups that are local, that speak, that work and serve the most local of the communities. Because one of the things that I believe all of you are aware of, for the longest time possible, we never knew that we could drive our own development agenda. We could solve our own problems until COVID came. And I am so proud over the last 4 years to be an African, because we really demonstrated to the world that we can deal with our local challenges, in as much as, of course, some governments took advantage of the situation. But we saw communities mobilizing themselves. We saw communities tapping into their own resources, both in kind and financial, in dealing with these issues. So funders should really target to work with these communities. And they must apply, number 2, approaches in funding, which are in funding international organization to the local organizations across Africa. So the same approaches that they're using to support other international organizations, we are advocating for the same to be applied while dealing with local organizations across this continent. And so the other thing is that philanthropy, civil society at large, social enterprises should be willing to acknowledge past failings. One of the things that we really don't do well in is we like to bury our failures, and we really want to focus, on things that are going well. So we've got to practice what I'd mentioned earlier, radical imagination, and we have to take very swift action in order to unlock the transformational agenda that we are looking at. The other thing is we've got to be very innovative. We've got to be very innovative. We've got to be tenacious. We have got to be optimistic as African leaders are meeting the hopes and aspirations of their communities every day. The leaders that we are having, whether at government level, private sector level, social entrepreneurs within the continent, community-based leaders, we are looking at hopes and aspirations of our communities every day. And so being innovative, being optimistic is the least that we can do. And so the recognition and investments that we require, I think funders should also be able to recognize that and appreciate it, and then work in a collaborative manner to enable us pursue the development agenda that we are pursuing in a multi-sectoral approach, in a collaborative approach, in a partnership approach. Thank you so much, and allow me put a comma there to give also space for other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evans. That was very informative. And now, before you go, or before we let you take a break, you said you're at 16%, and now this conversation is, we are looking at how we can get Africa into receiving like 50% of the funds coming into African-led organizations. How can we do this? One of the questions that has been asked by Wamoyo is, how can we, what are funders or donors looking for? How can we be investor ready? Maybe if you can clarify that. I know you've mentioned that some of the things you can do is you've mentioned that, but now we want you to go in depth if you have it with you. Like, how can we be investor ready as African-led organizations?
Thank you so much. I think the bottom line is for us to first and foremost appreciate that our approach, our strategies is African-led. So I've seen organizations which are pursuing the localization agenda. They've got, because we are saying we've got to be African-led, but then they have an African at the lead, and then down here, they flip the board and still incorporate, or rather incorporate the non-Africans. This is a very sensitive conversation. We have to be very careful with the language. So the non-African, so we must really demonstrate that we are really serious and intentional about having African-led institutions. So the leadership of organizations, while you are positioning yourself for attracting this funding, has to be local. It has to be local. You have to demonstrate that, you know, communities that you are serving is at the center of your leadership strategy. So I think that is one. The other thing is around capacity. This is a serious issue. Of course, there are organizations giving money to strengthen capacity of these institutions, of the leaders, the leadership gaps which are there. But then there are some basics that we really have to do as organizations. And in dealing with these basics, we've got to really at least have the basic capacity requirements that then position you as an entity to attract this funding. The other thing is around demonstration of impact, what people want to see. Time has come now, and we really have to change and conform to some of the trends that we are seeing, because we cannot go against them. It is what is currently the matter on the table. Time has come, the time is gone when, you know, donors were just giving money for the sake of giving money. Now everyone wants to see impact, and that impact must be demonstrated in theory before, you know, some conversations can be put on the table. So in making yourself ready as an entity, as an organization, I think you've got to demonstrate on paper that given this investment, this is the impact that we hope and we are sure we will achieve. Of course, down the line, there are failures, and I'm happy some of these donors, out of the conversations that we are championing as ecosystem support entities, are around these things. The need for us to embrace failures, because it is only through those failures that we get to tighten and become better in the approach that we are having. In positioning yourself to be to attract this funding, the other thing is the collaborative approach to your work. What we are now seeing is donors insisting on, you know, entities who are like-minded coming together to form consortiums, and then using that to to vote for the fundings that we are talking about. So coming together, having those consortiums, bringing together like-minded entities is one of the things that really gives you a competitive advantage while reaching out to these entities that are giving the resources that we are looking at. I think that will be it.
Thank you so much, Evans. Maybe I leave this opportunity to anyone that has a question or a comment.
Lynette, that means either we were very clear or we did not communicate at all. I'll hope that we were clear.
For me, I believe you're very elaborate and very
but then
clear.
this is a live session. We can always share questions as they come. Additional comments is also welcomed. But I want to say, as I close my side, 3 things. One, I feel it is important for us to generate knowledge around the work that we are doing as development entities. We've got to tell our story and not have the Western and the global North tell our story. A time has come for us now. You who is here, how do you tell your story? Because one of the things that really enables us to attract resources is if I'm able to tell the story of how an enterprise that I set back in our village is changing lives, is causing impact in those local communities, and really talk about it, then that is an avenue for positioning myself and my entity to attract the resources that we are talking about. So one of the things of the conversation that we are having that we really have to do is to tell our story, is to showcase our work as entities in this continent. So the generation of knowledge here could be in form of those stories, knowledge here could be in form of the gaps which are existing, because some of these entities again do not know. They rely on that Western media. They rely on the picture that is being painted on the other side. But then if we are able to paint our own picture and really identify the gaps which are existing, then we will be directing the funding that we are looking at to the right areas. I think the other thing that we really have to look into is beyond this conversation that we are having. It is important for us to look into other external factors like the legal policy infrastructure for these organizations that we are talking about, because we are only as strong as the environment is. A weak environment that does not enable the work we are doing cannot really position us to pursue the development that we are pursuing. So we really have to be very intentional, belonging to networks, for example, like EAPN, the social enterprises networks which are existing, the impact investment networks which are existing. We've got to be part of this network so that collectively we can pursue an enabling environment agenda, an agenda that will enable us to have an environment that pursues and that promotes the work and the causes that we are pursuing as entities. I think the other thing is for us to really embrace collective approach to work. I'll never tire from talking about this. We really have to be very intentional about reaching out to like-minded entities. The time for working in silos is gone. Their donors are no longer interested in entities which are coming in silos. So the collaborative approach to work has to be demonstrated, either in you positioning communities that you are going to support and attend to in the initiative you are looking for money, or you pulling together other entities like you and jointly pursuing the funding that you are looking for. So it has to be one of those two, because if you look at even SDGs, goal number 17, we've got to break the silos and work in a collaborative manner. When I told you, Wanjira, I talk too much. Let me stop there.
I want to come in here and say thank you very much, because that last sentence is like a pitch for the work that I do. Like I said, I run Collaborative Value Partners Africa. where we bring people together to collaborate, multi-stakeholder alliances for collaborative value. And one of the things that we have noticed, one of the challenges is that the enterprises, entrepreneurs, the innovators are not very keen on collaboration. And that's why your presentation is spot on, because you have emphasized that if we want to make systems change or transformational change, we must collaborate. So I'm very, very happy about that, because that is also my experience. And I'm encouraging the people today here to really seek collaboration. And if you have any challenge, you can come to us. That's what we do. And even if you don't want to come to us, please do it. Don't work in silos. Please collaborate, because that's the only way you'll be able to make the kind of change and impact that we're looking at. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Wamuyu, just to add on that, there are many platforms which are existing, many platforms. She has just mentioned one. There are many platforms. You've got to be part and parcel of these initiatives. You've got to really, for lack of a better word, fight the battle within the spaces which are there. So I mentioned earlier about the need for us to talk about the work that we do. For a very long time, we were brought up under the notion that what the left hand is doing, the right hand should not know about. But then things have changed. That I think currently applies well in church when you're giving your tithe and your offering. But while changing lives outside here, the only thing that will make Ford Foundation to see and understand and appreciate the work that you're doing is you talking about it, is you profiling it, documenting it, so that other people can come in to support the dream and the vision that you are having. And so there are many other platforms. I've just mentioned about the upcoming conference. I would want to see, we normally reach out to the civil society space, to social entrepreneurs. Hey, we have calls for session abstracts, and we don't receive these abstracts from entities from the social entrepreneurship space. These are the spaces that will then position you for the funding that you are talking about, because these are the spaces where those donors are. And so it is important for us to continue having platforms like this one to educate ourselves and also showcase the opportunities which are existing to enable us jointly and collaboratively move forward. Back to you, Wanjiru.
Thank you very much for that session. We can now jump over to our next speaker, who is Harriet Njenga from Think Opal.
Thank you very much, Splenda. I really appreciate it. And Evans, I think you have touched a lot even into what I was supposed to talk about. But what I'll do, I'll just speak about it from a high level perspective. My conversation will mainly focus on, writing grant winning proposals, having relationship with potential donors, and last but not least, focusing on how do you satisfy accountability requirements of these donors. This has a lot to do, just echoing back to what Evans has said, this has a lot to do with you as an individual who's running a grassroots organization, a social enterprise, or a development organization. We as founders or people running this organization, we tend to focus a lot on getting obsessed with the impact that we are having. We tend to forget that the impact has, the organizations we are running have to have some form of structure, have to have some form of system, have to have everything in mind. So what happens, and this is my experience working with social entrepreneurs and impactful startups, is we fall too much in love with our idea. We believe that our idea is solving an amazing social and environmental problem, which, again, non-debatable, we agree, but we forget that as much as we're solving this problem, and as much as we're solving this problem, we need to bridge the gap between us being in this silo, back to what Dr. Amoyo was saying, and how do we communicate all this impact, all this work that you're doing in a way that donors, grants, other stakeholders can be able to relate. What am I saying? How are you telling your story as an organization? If a donor is to come to your organization today and ask, what is the impact that you've had since you started your organization? are you able to convey that information in a way that is very clear, that in a way that is somebody can be able to see? If I'm to give a bit of, investment or give access to grants to this organization, it means that they might be able to scale to the next level. As an organization, again, when you're looking at how you've put up your system, over and above just looking at impact measurement and reporting, just looking at your partners and collaboration, how are you putting yourselves out there? Yeah, I had like Lynette, you're based in Embu. Yeah, Embu is like a 2 hours drive from Nairobi. But how are people across Kenya, across East Africa, able to know about your work? You might be in Embu and the work that you're doing might be amazing, you're having an impact and you're engaging with women, but who else knows about your work? Who else, which other partners have you engaged who are within the same ecosystem and you're transmitting value? Are you working with hospitals, for example? Are you working with GBV specialists to help you do the work that you're doing? That's just, food for thought. When you go to writing grant proposals, it's very, very important to focus on what is the funder's priorities. You might be an organization that is really focused, say, on adding value to, and you work a lot, say, for example, with women, or you're in the agricultural sector. But this specific funding proposal requires you to highlight how you're going to do a certain program or project in a period, say, of 3 years, and focus a lot on gender-based violence, for example, or focus a lot on FGM. So how is you as an organization, how are you going to ensure as you're writing this proposal, you can clearly highlight those points and show that and give confidence? That's another thing. Give confidence to the donors that if they're able to give you these grants, you're able to deliver as indicated. Another thing is ensuring that you understand who the donor is and where they're coming from. Yeah, so just don't go and say, okay, this is a grant, I'm just going to copy paste my company profile, my organization profile, and just send it and assume that somebody will be able to, understand in the midst of all the wordings, what you really do, what you really want, and how you're going to execute it. So be very clear. When you're looking at partnerships and collaborations, and when you're engaging with various organizations, you engage with them because there are various things that you need to align with. Say, for example, if I'm an organization doing renewable pads, what I'll do in terms of partnership and collaboration is I'll need to work, say, with children home, for example, that support teen moms. Yeah. So when I'm engaging with them, I'm telling them, I'll be able to provide you with education. I'll be able to provide you with recyclable pads. I'll be able to provide you with X and X and X. So the same thinking that you approach when you're doing partnership and collaboration, how do you ensure that you're able to streamline that thought process to the grants proposals that you're applying for? Another thing that needs to be very clear, and it's usually very critical, is the element of budget and setting a realistic timeline. This budget and realistic timeline is a very critical aspect of ensuring that your grant proposal is streamlined. Reason being, you might find maybe in some instance you might over budget, in some instance you might under budget, in some instance when you're setting the timeline, you might set it either too low or too high. So as much as you're setting this timeline, this is an opportunity to show off your expertise. You need to be at a place where if anyone is to come back and ask you questions about the proposal that you've shared, you can be able to come up with evidence-based information to show why do you require this budget and why is this timeline, why did you indicate this timeline? The other thing, again, that is very strong is your team's expertise and qualification. As an organization, you might have an internal team, you might have advisors, you might have a board. How do you use the expertise to show the donors that you will be able to run this program or project within the period of time? You're able to show them that you have a very strong chief financial officer who's going to be able to ensure that the funding that will be dispersed will be clearly accounted for. How are you going to ensure that, to show that the executive director who's running the organization, the people who are credible, are ethical, are people who are who have experience in the work that they're doing. These are some of the areas that are very, very critical. The other element is ensure that you follow the application guideline. Every grant proposal call for application that is put out there has different guidelines that need to be followed. Ensure you read the guidelines clearly. Ensure that you're able to see, how can my proposal stand out? Yeah, how can my proposal stand out, and how can I ensure that if somebody is able to read my proposal, because it's an opportunity to pitch, but the people that you're pitching on to are not meeting you face to face, but they really need to like you. From a sales background, we say somebody needs to like you first before they do business with you. So how do you use that mentality on the grant proposal and ensure that if somebody is able to read that proposal, they're going to fall in love with the work that you're doing, and it will be like some sort of a love letter, for lack of a better definition. Responding to potential donors. When you're talking about responding to potential donors, don't look at donors as some person who's really on top of you. Yeah, look at them as a friend who you need to form a relationship with. Yeah, look at them as a friend who you need to form a relationship with. Build that relationship. Even if the grant proposal that you're applying for doesn't come through, always seek to know. Send an email, do a phone call, do a virtual call, or if it goes to a certain extent and they're very accessible, you can even do a meeting, a physical meeting with them. Try to understand in your proposal, where did you go wrong? Because if you know where you went wrong or the gaps that your proposal had, then on the next proposal or on the next proposal that you're applying for, you'll be able to ensure that these gaps have been filled. Another thing, just looking at responding to potential donors, and the other bit of winning grant proposal, is it's very, very important to have mentors in the space. Identify mentors directly and indirectly. There are so many individuals, even in this space right now, who have written a grant winning proposal. Who have written a grant winning proposal. How are you able to work with them and walk in their path to ensure that they're mentoring you on this journey, so that you're able to learn from their mistakes, you're able to gain from their wisdom, you're able to walk on their footprint to ensure that they're guiding you towards the right direction. When you look at the other aspect and the other element of satisfying funder accountability requirements, I think this is where most of the time rubber hits the road. As organizations, we might be very excited to get the funds. We forget to read the accountability requirements on the contracts or on the documentation that you will need to sign when you get to the next level. Seek to understand what does this donor require in return? Do they require an impact measurement report? Do they require a coin-by-coin accountability of the money that they have disbursed? And if so, in what format do they require this to be? Transmitted? Is it in a report format? Is it in an Excel format? Just ensure that you're clear from the onset how you'll be able and what resources you require. Will you need to purchase, for example, a software SaaS, software as a service application to help you with doing the reporting? What's the frequency that you'll be using to do the reporting? Are you doing newsletters, or are you doing updates? Or are you doing meetings every other month to engage with them and to give them an update of the work that you have done? Are you doing a newsletter every bi-weekly to give them an update? Basically what we're saying is look at every donor as a person as a step to get to the next donor. Because if for this donor, for example, you're able to do an amazing project with, you can easily use them as a reference point to get more funding as you scale your organization and as you grow the programs or the projects that you're getting. So on the bit of funders accountability and requirements, make sure that you as an organization, you clearly understand what is required. Yeah. When you're talking about collecting and analyzing data, don't be afraid to go over and beyond. From a sales perspective, we always say, always under promise and over deliver. Because the moment you under promise and over deliver, when the next round of funding from the same organization comes in, you'll automatically put yourself in a place where you become top 5. Just because the last time that you were given access to the funding, you over-delivered on the requirements that were set. I don't know whether there are any questions still there. As the question come in, another element that I would really like to echo what Evanson said is the power of storytelling. In the age of technology, you find that there are so many avenues that you can use to tell your story. Us at Thinkopol, what we do every week on Thursday, we publish a blog feature to feature amazing change makers who are doing amazing work. Mostly right now we are covering East Africa. And the reason we're doing this is to show that these change makers, it's very important to talk about the work that you're doing. Let not only the people that are within that community or within that area, let them not be the only ones that understand the work that you're doing. You can use social media. You can use, these days with the phones that we're having, it's very easy to just record a video and share about your work. We are getting to a scenario where a number of these donors are using digital and using the technology platforms to learn more about your work. You might get some partners are reaching out to you because they saw something that you did, because you shared your story and you've been talking about your work, for example, on your Instagram page. Do not be scared to share about your work, because it's very important, and you have no idea who will have access to that information. Over and above just looking at the grant bit, it can also be an opportunity to get to mobilize volunteers, for them to come on board and to help you in certain programs and certain projects that you're doing. So don't be afraid to share about your work. Look at your organization, look at it, for example, from a business perspective, put structures and systems, ensure that in each and everything that you're doing, you're putting the data in place. You're recording every information possible, you're measuring impact, and you're reporting impact. A number of these big organizations do impact reports, annual impact report, the same way we do annual financial reports. So even you as an organization, what's the frequency of you doing your impact report? It's very important to put all your information together. So at the right time when you're looking for donors, you're looking for investors to come in, you have all the information and there's evidence of all the work that you've been doing in the existence of your period. Any questions?
Well, thank you, Harriet, for your presentation. And I love the fact that you say that we're living in a technological era where social media creates a lot of impact today. Now, organizations, we don't have to have all the paperwork when we need to be accountable to the donors. We can refer them to our social media pages where we can tell them, see what we have done. It's evident, and it's also on social media or even on your website where you're able to interact with other community members or other people who may want to reach out to your organization. Perhaps if you're serving people in Embu, by sharing on social media, we could get people from other parts of the country saying that we need your services in our region. So yeah, so the social media era, let us make good use of it as part of our accountability. I don't know if anyone, Dr. Wamoyo, Noreen, I saw you in the building. Do you have any comment or anything to add to the presentation so far?
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think a lot has been covered. And I don't know whether that presentation can be available to the members so that they can look at it as they think through their own organizations and where the gaps are. That would be helpful, even if it's in a power presentation format. I don't know whether you have that available. People sometimes need time to just digest what has been said and compare to what they're doing and therefore identify the gaps that they may have with their own organizations. Thank you.
Just a brief comment. Thank you very much for the presentations. Very well presented, and really speaks to our individual situations. And thank you, Harriet. I think we are beneficiaries of this storytelling. You have helped us to tell our story, and I think that storytelling is really, really impactful, because within a very short while, you find that by just circulating your story, there's a lot of response and feedback. So thank you very much, the presenters. Much appreciated.
I can see there's a question in the chat. Ben is asking how you pick projects to publish their activities.
Is it possible for Ben to unmute and maybe clarify more on that question? It's a bit not clear. How do you pick projects to? Maybe Ben, you can unmute and ask the question and clarify a bit. Is Ben with us?
Okay, sorry, she just mentioned on them also doing storytelling for other social entrepreneurs. So just asking for the criteria they use to pick or highlight projects like for the members, the Catalyst members in various chapters.
If I may get your question right, that goes back to the maybe the stories that we say we do every other week. That's my assumption.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Basically, what we look at is do you have a clear balance, especially on the impact? What's your revenue model? Because for us, we believe that the revenue model is very critical for you to become sustainable. So we look at how are you balancing between purpose and profits, and what's the impact that you're having. So once the criteria we use, we do a discovery call and just understand your organization more, your social enterprise more. After that session, we'll be able to advise where you stand and how we can be able to proceed moving forward. So what I'll do, just put my email on the chat, then you can just send me an email, then we can have the rest of the conversation offline.
Great, thank you. I was about to ask for that.
All right, thank you. Maybe as a parting shot from my side is I would really encourage every individual here to join organizations and groups that you're within the same ecosystem with, because networking is very critical. Don't take it for granted. Organizations such as Catalyst, organizations such as EAPN can be very critical for you to getting access to some of these opportunities. Do not be locked into your own sort of world, and look at others getting the opportunity. They're getting those opportunities because they are putting themselves in those scenarios. So yeah, ensure you're joining groups and you're being active in the networking and exposing yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentations, Harriet and Evans. They were very informative. So perhaps before we now go to an interactive session where we hope everyone will maybe have something to say, something to contribute, we can have a short, maybe 5-minute icebreaker. And how I'd wish us to do it is I'll pick someone at random. You tell us your name and where you come from, and you don't have to tell us the name of the place. Just mention something iconic about your region, and then we can guess. Perhaps if where I mentioned where I come from first, I can say that we see Mount Kenya every day. So you'll be able to guess around which area I come from. So maybe we start with, I don't know whether you've understood. So maybe I pick someone like Purity Mumo.
Thank you for the opportunity. We have demonstrations every Monday.
Sam, can you tell us where she comes from? You laugh first.
Nairobi. Well, I think it's somewhere in Nairobi, but I can't tell, which part of Nairobi. Yeah, I just found that funny. Yeah.
Okay, it's Nairobi. Are we correct? Is Sam correct about your Purity?
Yes, he is.
Okay, then we over to you, Sam. Tell us what your name and where you come from. And yeah.
Well, yeah, my name is Sam Agutu. But I'll tell you that, I live in Nairobi, but where I come from, I think what you need to guess is that we grow groundnuts, peanuts.
Growing peanuts. Anyone wants to guess?
That must be a symbol. Aruyom. That is a symbol, Aruyom.
Godfrey, you said something?
Yeah, I'm saying that might be a symbol or Uyoma. I'm not sure, I'm just guessing. Sam can let us know.
Sam, is Godfrey correct?
Well, not quite, but we have the same characteristics as those. I come from Karachuonyo, which is just across the lake from Uyoma, and we do the same things. They grow groundnuts, we also do. Thank you.
Ah, that's nice. Okay, over to you, Godfrey. Your name and where you come from in terms of something iconic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Lynette. I'm sorry for joining late. My name is Godfrey. I work with Toaston. I have been based in Senegal, but now I am officially based in Kenya, supporting our partners in East Africa and Southern Africa, and also Anglophone. I come from, currently I'm somewhere in the western part of Kenya. And the area where I'm coming from, there's floods. Yeah.
Ben?
Budalari. Could be Ahero. Ahero.
Yes, Ahero, you got it, man. That is my home.
Oh, you are just my neighbor. You're my neighbor.
Oh, great. Yeah, I come from Ahero. Yeah.
Then you two should link up and maybe do something constructive now that you know you come from the same region, right?
To avert the flooding menace.
Build dikes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe now we finalize with Ben. Oh, you already mentioned where you come from.
I've just mentioned.
So I get someone random. Mudhoni M.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Lynette, for moderating this wonderful session. I live in Nairobi, but I come from an area where they grow either coffee or tea. And it's not very far from where Lynette is from.
I know where she comes from the description, but I leave this opportunity to someone else to do the guesswork.
Say that again.
Kiambu.
She said she comes from where?
Murang'a?
She said she,
Murang'a?
You're getting closer. Kiambu was far, Murang'a is closer.
I could have guessed Murang'a as well. So Kirinyaga.
You're coming closer.
Ghana.
Still coming closer. Go further on, further from Nairobi.
Maybe Nyeri.
Yes.
On your way to Nyanyuki.
Yes.
Super.
So amazing. It's wonderful to know where you people come from, that you know the regions that you come from. And given the conversation that we've had, we need to tell our own stories, understand the communities that we come from very well. So if we have organization based in where our regions where we come from, we need to understand even the geographical context of our communities. So having you, most of you have heard you live in Nairobi, but you know something unique about your communities. So if we can bring these to the organizations that we work in and be able, when we're dealing with donors, be able to tell our stories, our unique stories, and be able to tell, to have the a clear story, or rather understanding of the communities that we serve, like we understand our communities, I think we'll be at a better position even to be able to work within ourselves as catalysts, and also be able to reach to our donors with our own unique organizations and communities and platforms, something of the sort, if you get what I'm trying to say. So I've seen Brian has joined the room, so I'll ask you to introduce yourself. And we are just about to finalize, and we had amazing conversations about funding and capacity training and development. And we've had speakers who was Harriet, and we had Evans who gave great insight. And for me, one of my greatest takeaway is we need to understand our communities and be able, when you're dealing with donors, be able to reach out to these donors with a great understanding of our very own communities, and be able to write, if it's the grants writing that you're doing, the proposals that we are making, be able to write them without having to align with what the donor requirements, be able to identify the unique problems that we have as an organization based in a certain community or given the community that you're serving. So yes, Brian, take over and then you will let Godfrey Okumu, who's raising his hand, to speak. So Brian, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lynette. Thank you so much, the amazing Kenyan chapter, as well as the speakers we had today, from Evans to Harriet, as well to the leadership of the Kenyan chapter, Noreen and yourself. And a huge congratulations to Sprenda, the new coordinator, for taking up this role, even in my absence. I'm sorry that I'm joining quite late. I am trying to coordinate more sessions, and I just left a session right now, and I'll be jumping into another one in a few. But I just wanted to make sure that I jump into Kenyan session and wish you all the best. Again, my name is Maina Brian. I'm the regional coordinator for Africa at Catalyst 2030. I'm Kenyan by birth, and this is where I feel most at home, and this is where I want to make sure more impact is felt. So with that in mind, I'm going to invite my brother Geoffrey, because I feel like he has way more knowledge than I do and more wisdom. So Geoffrey, please come on board before I jump off. Thank you. And have a beautiful session. And please do make sure you join all the other sessions that are going on during the entire week. There's so much for you to learn, so much thought-provoking and insightful sessions that you can gain from. So I welcome you all to engage and register in as many sessions as you can. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Brian. Actually, just to confess, to make a confession, I only know Brian in the entire group, and that is not fair, you know. I think, as Lynette said, we need to connect more, because there's a lot of things that are going on. I had Evans talking about the issue of localization. There's one of our donors actually incorporated us in one of the conversation that has been going on what is called the power shift. I don't know if some of us are aware about that. There's been a huge conversation going up around on the power shift that is being co-hosted by, you know, by the international NGOs, led by Oxfam, Plan, and the rest. So we were privileged, one of our donors, they were allowed to co-opt a grantee to join the conversation. And I was super impressed. It happened in Nairobi just last month. I was super impressed with the IAB. At the IAB are the ones who hosted the conversation for 3 days. I was really impressed by the feedback from grassroots organizations that were present from South Africa, from Zambia, on the reality. And actually, Evans just talked about it. That yes, we are talking about localization, having international organization, and now having an African face, having an African office, and all that. But the challenge was that the power is still not shifting. The power is still held at the global south. And that was a really heated conversation. And I learned from that meeting that some people actually even lost their jobs in some of those international organizations for championing what the Catalyst 2030 has been championing. So I realized that this is a really, as Evans said, is a really sensitive issue. But just to let Evans know, but sometimes one thing that we agreed in that conversation, it is not wrong to be, change is not comfortable. Change is not comfortable. And it's not wrong to speak our mind. I totally believe that if we really need sustainable change, if we really need more resources for our community programs, we really need to be comfortable to be in these uncomfortable spaces. Like now I'm part of it. I started advocating that we need more African organizations implementing in the grassroots to be part of this conversation. Because most of these organizations are even changing their strategies now. They are doing co-creation, working with other partners, who sometimes power is shifted to them, but they also hold powers, which is not fair. You find like an African-led organization that now has been power has been shifted to, coming back and still behaving like the global south, and that still also brings a lot of issues. So thank you, Brian, for being here. I think this is a conversation that, Brian, this Kenyan chapter, I'm now based in Kisumu. No excuse, no longer Senegal anymore. So I think we really need to get into these spaces. We really need to work together, guys, because some of us have been privileged to be in some of these spaces. So we really need to, like Wamoy said, we really need to really support all of us guys and not hold information to yourself. Let people know about these spaces. These are spaces that you just apply and be part of them, and let's occupy them together. Thank you very much, Lynette. Yeah, that is what I wanted to add.
So thank you for that, Godfrey. So as of today, I have a list of like 77 members in the Kenyan chapter. We're hoping that more members will join. Please share widely with your colleagues, with your friends, and invite them to join Kenya Catalyst 2030, to join Catalyst 2030, and then they'll be able to join the chapter. So, and also I take this opportunity to inform you about the annual Africa conference. Maybe Dr. Wamoyo will tell us more about it. We've been invited as a Kenya Catalyst chapter. It will be taking place on the 10th and the 11th of May. So it's basically like a platform for social entrepreneurs to engage, to network, and given that you're members of the Kenya Catalyst, and we've been invited and given, we'll have a slot where we about an hour length slot for us to engage with attendees. So these we're inviting members present and even other members in the group to join on the 10th and 11th of May. So Dr. Wamoyo, you can please tell us more about it, or Brian, I'm sure you have information about it.
I think Dr. Wamoyo has jumped out of the session.
Okay.
But I do also honestly believe that she would have been the best fit or yourself to explain more about it. But members, what we can say as of now is that we have received an invitation with a 1 hour slot to engage and communicate more about what Catalyst 2030 is, what we do. And this is a huge forum. It's also organized partly by the Ashoka team and so many other teams that we end up working with. What I'd say is there's no forum that I've ever attended that I've left with no new knowledge. So once the team reaches out to you, please feel free. It's going to be actually, I think it's next week, right? Lynette, on the 10th to 11th or 12th at the Tangaza University. I'm happy to share more information on the same through email and WhatsApp. Once you see it and you'd want to join us, please add as VP. Myself, Lynette, Sprenda, Noreen, Wamoyo will be there, hopefully, and we'll be able to engage with all the members who will be joining us. That is as the information I can share right now, but we will give you more information before the end of this day or before the end of this week. In the meantime, I just wish to remind you that some of these forums could be very important for you, and not only for you as a member of Catalyst, but also for your organizations as well, because you can use them to network, you can use them to build your portfolio, you can also use them to come up with solutions to some of the challenges we face. And this could be one of those places that you get to learn so much more. Mine is just to say thank you for everyone who's been here, for the amazing work that the Kenyan chapter has been doing. As the chair has said, I so wish and urge you to continue networking, continue working closely together instead of working in silos. There's a huge need for you to understand that if you collaborate on initiatives, the more you create that visible aspect and the more people will be able to see the work you're doing. Geoffrey is joining us now officially in Kenya. He's been one of our very strong members in the African chapter, helping us lead with the African leadership. Geoffrey has now moved back to Kisumu, and I hope that the Kisumu team can take advantage of that and the people in the Western area, because Geoffrey also comes in with so much knowledge in the field and having worked with so many funders, as well as the organization he works for, which is doing very well. Geoffrey is also very in tune with what we work on the Africa Forward campaign. So Geoffrey, again, I wish that as you come back to Kenya, you also come and hold the Kenyan team and work with them very closely, in seeing to it that we're also able to support the chairs in achieving the Africa Forward campaign in Kenya as well. And any other person really strongly believes that they have a role to play, I welcome you to this. Again, we cannot, there's an amazing proverb that I use every single time. And it's, until the lion learns how to write the story, we don't always glorify the hunter. We are that lion that we don't know how to tell our story. We as Kenyans have a beautiful story to tell. We have so much to showcase and profile. Let's start showcasing the things we are doing. Let's make sure that the world gets to notice the work we've been doing. And then let's use that platform to grow and be bigger and help more people in achieving and creating a sustainable livelihood. Mine is just to say thank you and have a beautiful, beautiful day, and enjoy all the other sessions you're going to be attending. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian. So does anyone have a comment before we break? Thank you so much for your time. At least we have 9 minutes to spare before our session is supposed to end at 12:30. Mine is to just thank everyone for attending. It was a wonderful session. It was very informative. Thank you, Harriet. Thank you, Evans, for your very impactful conversation and presentations. And we do hope that we will have them. We'll share with the members so that we can keep reminding ourselves and maybe practice what you taught us and what you've enlightened us through your wonderful presentations. And now, when I'd request Brian and Splenda, and if Noreen is present, maybe just a 2 minutes talk after everyone leaves.
Thank you everyone for joining this session. This was a very informative session. Thank you for your time, and also to the speakers. Thank you, Evans and Harriet, for all that you've done. We are going to take everything you've said. So thank you for your wise words. Thank you, everyone.